And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a special edition of Rickcast, where Rick interviews very fascinating and interesting people. And I'm lucky tonight to be joined by Ryan Joseph, the Modern Papist, who is going to be on tonight to talk about some issues that we want to kind of zero in on within the Catholic Church. And we want to take a look at it from a different perspective than a lot of talk goes. And of course, in a lot of channels, the idea of Catholic masculinity has been talked about from the laity point of view, how Catholic men need to become more masculine. And I don't think I'm speaking out of turn for Ryan that we agree in that regard. But we also want to focus tonight on something that's kind of mentioned, kind of talked about, but is also kind of not really gone into too much outside of little whispers, and that's what about the leaders of these churches, the shepherds of these communities? We're talking about the priests, the masculinity crisis, you could call it, within Catholic priests, and what can we do to attract more masculine priests back to the priesthood? So, Ryan, welcome to the program. Thank you for taking some time to hang out with me tonight. How are you, bud?
I'm doing great. Thanks for inviting me to be on. Pretty excited to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. Anybody who ever wants to come on this show, I'm always shocked and amazed. So I'm always like, really? But cool. So just real quick, if you want to introduce yourself, what do you do? What's your channel? And, what's in the whole Catholic sphere of things, or what do you like to look at as far as to analyze?
Oh yeah. So my name is Ryan Joseph. I'm a statistician. I work for a corporation that I'm not really willing to put out there. Recent events. Yeah. But I work for a corporation. I'm a statistician by trade. At night, I will make videos and talk about different aspects of the church in relation to the numbers that we have, and try to extract insight that we can gain that I don't think a lot of people either know how to do well or are presented in a very biased way. So case in point, there's 840 people leaving for every 100 people converting. That statistic has been thrown around all over the place, but it was interpreted in a very armchair manner, and unfortunately it just kept getting magnified.
Yeah.
So we definitely need people who are able to explain that in a way where it's not theologians necessarily talking about science, but it's scientists who are faithful in their faith talking about the science that affects the faith. And so statistics is how I'm trying to do that. I also focus a little bit on AI because I work with AI, and I'll be developing more and more AI in my job, so writing code and stuff. So that is definitely an area I'd like to follow the Pope in addressing.
Yeah, Rickcast, we talk about AI a lot and its impact on wider culture, and I have a unique appreciation for statisticians and people who love numbers because my gorgeous wife is an industrial engineer.
Okay.
She's a professional engineer, so that's actually how when we were first dating, we connected through baseball, because I would take her to baseball games and she took to it like that, because when you're teaching her the game, like, oh, on base percentage is this, pitch count is this, that, and the other thing, and she just took to it like a fish to water. So I have a very warm place in my heart for numbers people, because I think you guys are very underwhelmed, and I believe in the age of instant information and clicks and big headlines and clickbait, statistics are used, whether it's polling or like the number you use there, as headline grabbers, and whatever the way that the data can be manipulated to prove somebody's point, because so many of us lack the ability to properly interpret it, Ryan, that statistics are just abused in this new social media data age.
Like how many times have you heard the statement or the slogan, correlation doesn't mean causation? And then that's supposed to end the debate right there. Like that, it's like the most ridiculous thing. You still have to justify it. Whatever. That's a pet peeve of mine because I see it all over the place. So
I get it. I get it. So let's dive into this. What is your idea? What is your thesis? Your uh, jumping off point with the fact that the Catholic media sphere has talked about laity and how there's a lack of masculine men leading households, and there's plenty of channels that talk about that, and they talk about it very well. I do it
Yeah.
my own little space here with the Armed Papist and trying to teach men and women about firearms rights and the fact that Catholic doctrine supports that. You can check out my book, The Armed Catholic, on Amazon. Shameless plug. But the idea is, okay, you could have the most masculine group of men in a church or in a diocese, but it's not going to get a lick of difference, or it's not going to make the impact it truly needs to make if the pulpit is not in support of it, because it either a doesn't want to because of Susans from the parish council, or
Yeah.
it just doesn't understand it because sometimes it's not the guy's fault. They're just not as masculine as some. Not every guy is like uber masculine guy and all these other kinds of things. It's not their fault, home bringing or whatever. So how do we look into this topic?
So I think the first thing, and I think the first thing is that some priests really need to grow a beard.
Of course, two
And
beautiful
the reason, and it's not because we
naturally
both
tell
have
that.
beards, but like, I'm thinking of myself, like if I were to shave, like I would have a baby face, and so that wouldn't really look masculine, right? And
No.
so the there is some aspect. This is a suggestion. I don't have any science behind this, but it is like you have like you said, those priests that they may not be muscular, they may not be all that assertive, but if they grew a beard out, they would look wise. They would look a number of things that are attributed to leadership, especially when they're older. And so this is meant to be kind of a joke, but at the same time, like real, because like that actually happens. So, but getting back to the point, we have so like we're in a situation where, and it's going to get a little numbery
Go ahead.
here.
Just knock yourself
So
out.
we are in a position where we have about 50% of priests compared to 1965.
Okay.
Like it's incredibly, like we have about, I mean, a little over 30,000. So I won't get too specific because the specifics don't really matter. It's the proportion that matters. And the uh, the number of people have increased, I think, by a third that claim to be Catholic, according to even Catholic sources like Kara. So like we've lost 50% of our priests, and we've gained like a third of our, like 50% to a third of the population. And so you have this like weird thing going on where like one's going up, one's going down, when the priest population really should be proportionally increasing at the rate of the population, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're
Yeah.
just not seeing that.
Yeah.
And
Real quick, I don't.
yeah,
Like I said, I'm going to jump in because my ADD mind pops up. So we also,
yeah,
the priests that we do have, we're getting more and more of them, and this is not a racial thing, right? But we're getting more and more of them that are not homegrown, for lack of a better term. They come from
yeah,
Africa, they come from India, and that's great. I'm glad that they have pursued their passion, that they want to become one. But there's also the difficulty of, if you don't have roots here to really establish and kind of get within the culture of it. So if you were to look at that number even more, we've lost our own homegrown
yeah.
population of priests that's just cratered through the floor.
Absolutely correct. And the what's very interesting about what you're saying is growing up, I went to a parish that did not have a priest, and it was in the Diocese of Lansing, which the Diocese of Lansing is one of the better uh, uh, vocational dioceses. But for whatever reason, we didn't have a priest there, and we would get visiting priests. So to follow up with your point, like every week, I would have somebody from a different country distributing the Eucharist, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so like there's a beauty in that, right? Like
Yeah.
the fact that I received the Eucharist from people from literally every continent where people are, um, that's awesome. But at the same time, like there was a lack of fatherhood there, right? Like there's just a lack of um, there's a lack of connection with the youth growing up and their spiritual fathers.
Mhm.
And I was one of the few people that actually followed up with my Catholicism as an adult. Like I did have a reversion, right? Like I did lapse for a little bit, but then I came back. Um, and many of the people that I went to catechism with, um, that doesn't seem to be the case based off the people that I actually stayed in touch with, which is really unfortunate. But part of that was probably due to exactly what you're saying is you get these visiting priests, and parishes like that. Now more and more people are just consolidating, right? Like you have, because of the priest crisis and going back to the numbers, like you have half as many priests, but like not twice as many people, but significantly more people than what you had in 65. And the congregations are getting bigger. And some people will brag about that. Like I go to a parish that has 2,000 people. Okay, how many priests do you have? Okay, do you have like one? Do you have
Mhm.
three? Okay, well you should have like six. Like, for a reasonable distribution of priest to laity, like the idea that you have one priest for every several, like 2,000 families, right? Like that's like 4,000 to 8,000 people, depending on the distribution.
And the crazy thing is, once again, I'm sorry, I'm jumping in.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you go to older churches, if you're lucky enough to go to an older church that was built, now the smaller altars where you used to have mass happening 8 times
Yeah,
are just essentially decorations for statues because they don't have the priests for them. And people, it's become such a generational thing, like you said, that younger people grow up like, oh, those are nice. And it's like, no, those used to be altars and you used to have one priest there, two priests there, all doing the mass at the same time.
yeah.
And the and I may be jumping the gun, for this,
No,
but the
you're
lack
bringing up a good angle.
of priests has given rise to something that a lot of us are not happy with, which is the increase in Eucharistic ministers, because people complain like, hey, it's too long of a line to wait. And so, of course, Americans we have to have drive through everything. And I guess that means including drive through communion. And the lack of the priest, like you're talking about, the central crisis, that
Yeah.
lack has spidered out into all of these things.
Well, exactly. And like I've been to a parish where there's 20 people in the congregation and four of them go up to be extraordinary ministers.
Yep.
And I'm just like, what are you doing? Like there's no reason for all four of you. Like our parish is very fortunate because Father Eric he doesn't tinction, so we receive both body and blood if we receive on the tongue,
Mhm.
and we have altar rails. This is a Novus Ordo parish, by the way, so like basically a unicorn. But this is also the Archdiocese of Detroit, so it's we have a lot more, I would say, reverent Novus Ordos than
Yeah.
other areas, simply because we had so many TLMs, which everybody knows we don't anymore. Um, but to your
Which is
point
a
about the
tragedy, by
parish,
the way, but yeah.
oh, it absolutely is, because it was one of the, if not the highest density diocese with TLMs. Like you could go, for me, it was like 15 minutes, and I'm in a suburban area.
Mhm.
Now I have to go to St. Joseph Shrine, which is like 35 minutes away from me, or one of the chapels, which is about as long, but it's still it's not as distributed as it was, and it was very convenient. And that being said, like you're yeah, like we're relying too much on the culture, the fast food perspective of we have to get out of here to make a game that will be like starting. The game will start in like 2 hours, and it's like, okay, well, like you can wait 10 minutes. sense.
So
Right?
when I go to El Paso, because that's where our wife is from,
Yeah.
and we go to a Nova Soto mass near her parents' house.
Hmm.
I swear it's like a sports store with the amount of football jerseys that are in that place. And my wife looks at me and she's like, "I'm sorry, it's just the culture here in El Paso. Like it's just
Yeah.
and I'm like, honey, I get it. There's nothing we can do about it, but
Yeah.
you get that because sometimes even the priests are like, yeah, well, the Cowboy game starts at 10:30. It's a noon game, so I'll get you out of here in time. Don't worry about it. We've all, I'm sure you've done the meme too, where we're going, yeah, that guy, if only men were as devoted to going to church as they are going to a sports ball team, it would be
Exactly.
so much better in life. But that's just the way, you know, I guess we can, let's connect the circle. NFL is masculine, at least right now. So that attracts the men too. I mean, it's being more feminized by the day, but still
Yeah.
has that masculine core that attracts men to it. Like if you had more masculine priests and things like that, maybe you could bring them back to that way because men will naturally flow to masculine examples, even
Right.
subconsciously.
Right. And I would say like that joke, right? Like I think we've all heard it in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
We've been going to mass for like a decade. Um, that joke, I would argue, is a very feminine joke because exactly what you're saying is you're saying, well, this game over here is more important, and so I got to get this done right now, right?
Yep.
Like, and it's like, and it becomes the mass becomes subservient to that, and so like if you're an altar boy, like my son just started being an altar boy, and so like if Father Eric said that, I'd be like, after mass, I would ask him like, why did you say that? Like
Mm-hmm.
like you have God in your hands, and obviously I would be respectful. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
disrespectful to my priest. I'm not that kind of person that would do that. And but like it is one of those things where if you're trying to promote men to become or boys to become men, like pointing to a game being more important than mass, like completely undermines that.
Yep. Yeah, and that's because the priests don't demand that the mass comes first, right?
Right.
They're accommodating, they're enabling that behavior. If you want to use the
Exactly.
parenting words, because he is the shepherd, he is the parent, he is the father of the flock. He is
Right.
enabling them to put it secondary. So
Well, right.
at least you're coming, right? At least you're coming to church.
Yeah.
That's
At least yeah.
I'm happy that you're here.
So I really shouldn't say feminine. It's effeminate,
Yeah,
right?
I
Like
think they
it's
both work.
but well, feminine like there's femininity that's good is good, right?
Hmm,
Like but like a man should not be acting feminine, and so not to get too but I just thought about that. I was like, okay, well I should probably
that's
correct
fine.
it. But it's yeah, so like this goes into another problem too is that the what you're saying about demanding, right? Like there's a point of do you have kids? I'm sorry, I don't remember if you have kids.
No, I'm married, but we never had kids.
Got it. Okay, so when you like as I'm sure growing up, like when your parents tell you to do things,
Hmm.
right? Like it's you know, clean the dishes. And it's not just to be like, well, you're doing a task I would be doing, but you're doing it for me and you're kind of like this little robot for me. Some people kind of paint it that way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately some parents are just terrible at like explaining things to kids. But it's like, no, you need to learn how to take care of yourself when you're older, right? Like that's why you're doing this now. And there is an aspect of where you do have to learn to be part of the family and put your sacrifice for the family reasonably, right? Like um and so like with this it's like, okay, so a priest calling people to confession, like demanding that they go to confession, but conversely also being available for confession, right? Like, and so this is another thing I recently did a video on, which is we don't have enough priests for confession.
Mm.
Like if everybody went to confession, all Catholics went to confession, which some people may say, well, why are you counting everybody, right? Like, why are you counting the people who never go or rarely go? It's because they're still baptized, right? And because they're still
Still
baptized,
required of them. It's still required of them by
Yeah,
at least once a year. The church has even scaled it back to the point they're like, you got to go at least during Lent.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
that's
Like
it.
at least once a year. And so I did my analysis where I broke it down where it's like, okay, if everybody went once a year, this is the minimum amount of time just by the numbers, right? Averaging 4 minutes of confession. Um, every priest would have to do a year, and it comes out to be about 130, 133 hours that in the nation every priest has to do that, which is a little over like around 2.5 hours um, a week. But like the problem is that we don't see that happening. We see a lot of half-hour parishes, right? Like where confession, where it's 4 to 4:30, or 3 to 3:30, and then by appointment, or 3 to 4, or by appointment, and that's all that's on the website.
Yep.
And
And
like,
if you
I'm
ever
sorry.
call for an appointment, if you ever call for an actual appointment, they'll say, "Well, we have it on Fridays from 3 to 3:30," and so they kind of
Or I mean,
redirect you back.
there's well, so that does happen, but I know of examples where that the priests do follow through with it. So I don't want to give the impression that it's like uniform in that capacity. I mean, I've been to my daughter and I needed to go to confession, and we went to our territorial parish, so the parish closest to us, which we do not go to um, um, unless it's really snowy, like unless we're just
Yeah.
not able to drive, like we will walk to it. And but like the we went there during the hours. We went into the bulletin, checked to see the hours, went during the hour time. The priest wasn't even there. We were right there, like right at 3. And then we went to the next closest parish, same time. Checked the bulletin before I'm in the car, checking on my phone. All right, so they have it at 3 to 4. We can go there. Same thing. Priest wasn't there. And it's like, you're not going to hit that number. Like, this is for once a year for everybody. Like, the bare minimum. Like, there's no way we're hitting that number.
And
And,
so
and
here in Texas, we have, I don't know if you have them up there, if you've ever seen, we have, they'll have special during Lent, they'll
yep,
have different sections. They'll have the confession or absolution seminar, essentially, where they bring in all the priests from around the diocese and they'll kind of scatter them throughout one church. And they're like,
yep,
you go there, you go there, you go there, you go there, boom, 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 boom. And that's even worse because now you're in a massive environment. And I get it. If it gets the job done, it gets the job done. But it
yes,
really loses the significance, and you really lose the emotional release and the relief and the gratification of all of that when you're kind of just like, next 35, next 17, next, all right, you're going to that one over there.
well,
And
well, some of
so
it is functional, so like I kind of understand it, but like the idea of like I go probably once a month. So I go
mhm,
12 times a year, and so like the number I'm putting out does not account for someone like me.
yeah,
So you start accounting for the people who are coming in several times a year, that number goes up. And it's like,
mhm,
I mean, we just don't have that happening. And so like with what you're saying, it kind of presents a situation like during Lent that absolutely happens, Holy Week, where there are more. My parish has more confession time. Like my priest is
yeah,
very adamant about it because it is a penitential season, um, and it is Holy Week leading up to the greatest celebration of Easter liturgically, and so um, but other parishes don't, like, they don't do anything, and it's like it boggles my mind where there's like no additional effort. But with what you're saying, it almost may create a situation where it's like, well, I don't need to go to confession now. I'll just
yeah,
wait until like 3 months from now. Which at that point, if they have a mortal sin, that's dangerous. Like that
it's
is really dangerous.
very, very dangerous. And I guess what my point was, and I didn't really communicate it well, is when when you treat the sacrament, the precious sacrament, like what most saints say, confession is and communion is the way to heaven.
Yeah.
When you treat one of the most beautiful sacraments that we have, in such a casual manner. It kind of
Oh,
leads to what you're
yeah,
saying, where they
yeah,
walk in and it feels like I'm at the stockyards and it's an auction. It's like, well, is it really this important if like you said, I'll just, you know what, I'll come back when it's less crowded, because then it gets into the fast food mentality of the kids are like, I don't want to be here. And the wife who maybe doesn't, or the husband that's kind of like barely hanging on,
yeah,
he's like, "I have to be there. There's not, it's obviously not that," and it creates, when you treat it with less relevance, and it will go downstream to those, like you are saying, who probably need it the most, right?
yeah,
You and I, like, I'm kind of a once a month guy, twice if I'm really like on my
yeah,
game.
yeah. I
We
just had a series
understand.
of that myself where I was like, for 3 weeks in a row, I was like, just so, there's stuff at work going on, so just that's it. Like,
Yeah, I'll get there, right? But those people who need it, they're kind of just like, well, I mean, obviously it's not that important to them, so I'll get here when I get here, and it's fine, and that kind of leads to, it's a cyclical problem. The priest is like, oh, we'll get to it, and there are some priests that don't. I'm sure you've had the experience. You talk to different people around the union, and their priest will kind of barely listen and be like, well, God loves you, one our Father, and I absolve you of your sins. And if you go to that priest enough times, you're gonna go, okay, yeah, all right. I
yeah,
already know
there's
what you're going to give me as the penance. I'm going to do one Our Father and maybe a Hail Mary if I did something really bad. And it's like they lose the point of the confession, which is to bear your sins before God and to be penitent for it and to truly
right,
ask for absolution.
right, and to show like real humility, um,
Mm,
and this kind of goes back to the whole idea of being masculine. Like, I've been to like confessions where I've been given a pretty weird penance, where it's like, do a good thing today, and it's like, what does that mean? Like, I don't like, go do this, but it's like this incredibly vague statement, and then you're like, I will try. Because like, we are, I always bring it back to parenting because there are spiritual fathers. Like,
exactly.
if I tell my kid something very vague and he's just not in the right mind, which I would argue, coming out of absolution and out of sin with the grace of God, um, like, you still need some help, right? Like,
Hmm.
that's one of the reasons that's what penance is there for. And so when you give a very vague penance, it's kind of like you're teaching your kid how to ride a bike by being like, just go sit on that seat and you'll get it. And it's like, but you're not there to hold the seat as they're starting to move, and you're letting them fall, but like, not, um, but you're there to help them, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of like a human training wheel. And so that's kind of how I view that, where it's like, I've had enough of those confessions, and I'm kind of like sick of them,
Yeah.
because it doesn't help me with the penance. It makes it more confusing. I'm not denying the absolution, so I'm not at all denying their
Oh yeah.
authority. But it gets back to your point about, to the point of this, is the masculine edge of the priesthood, and being firm but helpful, right? Like,
Where's the challenge to not do it again? Like,
yeah,
where's the challenge to, where's the penance that it is so, like, I've talked to buddies of mine where they go to like FSSP or whatever, and
yeah,
they'll talk about some of the penance that their priests are doing. I'm like, oh wow, I get, that priest is really trying to drive home a message to you, and a good confessor is a blessing that far too many Catholics have never truly experienced, because
right,
of, and I think we can even tie back into even the cultural thing. Like, if you're confessing to somebody, once again, it's not a racial thing, it's more of a cultural clash. If you're confessing to a guy from Africa, first of all, you can't understand half of the stuff they say after you're done with it, and so you're like, What was
Yeah,
that?
there's absolutely a language barrier for some of them,
So it's
and
hard for them to even try to do these things. So as a result, they kind of just make it as simple for them to get the absolution and help you get a penance to get it over, to try. So there's a lot of these factors that are kind of banging into each other in that regard. Because if the priest from India or even like a Spanish priest who he does the Spanish masses, but he's filling in for the other priest, doesn't really speak a lot of English. And so, he's like, Spanish, English, and you're like, am I pressing one for English?
well,
And so
I mean, I get that. It's just there's because like up here we have a lot of we have a lot of different ethnicities. Like we have the Chaldeans, like they have their own rites. So like
yeah,
we have a lot of Eastern rites,
hmm
and a lot of that is kind of absorbed into what you're talking about. But we still do have visiting priests from different countries. Um, and like I said, when I was growing up, like that happened all the time. Where the guy even from Ireland, thickest accent, his homily, I think I got like 2 words out of it. Right, like it was just such a thick Irish accent, and but it with drawing men to being priests, like the priests that we have now really need to act like virtuous men because they're supposed to represent the virtuous men or the virtuous man, right? And obviously they're not all of them are going to be perfect, but it goes back to what you were saying, like a challenge, like you know I put my son in, or I have my son do altar boy, like he's an altar boy, and he's really excited to do it. Like I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" He was like, "Yeah, I really want to do this. I want to do it. I want to go. I want to be with." And he knows the boys that are doing it, and it's kind of like a boys' club in a way, but in a good way. It's like an
yeah.
innocent, great thing to see, where you see like a teenager teaching like a 7-year-old, right? Because it's not fatherhood, but it points to fatherhood because that 13-year-old is helping my son learn how to go about doing the mass, and the priest is helping the 13-year-old. He's also helping my son,
hmm
but he's letting the 13-year-old have a little bit more autonomy in guiding my son, and I think that's beautiful. And this controversial topic for some people, but it's like when you bring a girl in there,
I was about to ask the question
like,
of how does the introduction of female altar servers disrupt that flow or that fellowship, we'll say.
well, right, it's and some people don't like this wording, but it's a boys space.
It is.
Like it's a boys space. The church allows it. I don't know why. Like I've read the document where in the 90s, because this is not a old thing, this is a very recent thing. um, I'm older than this policy, and the or this discipline, I should say, and priests, priests and bishops both can just have altar boys, and our parish only has altar boys. We have like 9. Our parish is not huge,
Yeah.
but we have like 9 altar boys, and that's more than a lot of parishes that have like thousands of people.
Yeah.
They'll have a bunch of altar girls, but not altar boys. And it's you're right in that the boys space gets disruptive in a very simple, explainable way. I mean, everybody knows this. Like
hmm
boys will be in the corner at the playground playing with each other, and a girl comes in, it just stops.
Well, it's
or
not even just
or
boys, it's men's spaces in general. Men's
right.
spaces are different when it's just men. The introduction of one female, even if she's like a super tomboy or whatever the case may be, always alters the dynamic
Yep.
because it's just because men will speak differently around a female for whatever reason. And, there's a bunch of different reasons why. And because a female, even if she doesn't understand, and that may be called a misogynist for us, she doesn't understand that men will change how they act, no matter how much a woman says, "Oh, you don't have to because I'm here." Men will, because women just don't think, act, and respond in the same way that men do. So it's
Right.
what is acceptable within a group of boys cannot be acceptable within a group of girls. Now you're throwing in, let's say it's a 13-year-old boy and like a 13-year-old girl. Now there's crushes and there's things like that. And
Yep.
now we have that dynamic playing in to this whole thing. And there's just a lot of reasons why it's, it's just not a good idea overall to mix these two in this space.
And I think you stated one of them, but I think there's two dynamics at play that really come out, because like we expect these boys to, again, not necessarily become priests, but discern the priesthood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the whole point.
Or
Discerning the
even just
priesthood.
grow in love of the mass. Just grow in love of
Exactly.
the mass by doing it.
And it used to be a minor order. Now it's not, but it's you have this dynamic, what you said, which is the crushes. But so you have that dynamic. So you're in this weird allure stage, like weird competition with this girl for this boy. But if there's another boy, well, now they have competition with each other over that girl, and now you've caused division.
Yep.
And it's and people will say, well, they're like, that's so childish. I'm like, they are 13.
They are children. They are children.
They're going through a hormonal stage. Like we know
Adult men do this, so of course kids are going to do it. So
right, like we know the psychology, we know the biology of what's going on here. Stop pretending that doesn't matter.
Yep.
And there's on top of that, you have like this infantilization of altar boys. So I can't remember his name, the kicker from
Harrison Butker.
Yes. So he's like, from my understanding, he still serves in mass.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's great because he's an adult. And a lot of parishes will implement, especially at schools, they'll implement, all right, well, only up until 8th grade can we have altar servers, because right, they include the girls too. And it's like, what are you doing? Like the 9th through 12th grade is like so pivotal to get in, like to support in a dramatic way, because if you don't do that, they're going off to college and everything, like in a way that's not helpful. And I'm not saying like the altar boy situation is like do or die, but it definitely like promotes and points to the priesthood in a way that nothing else does in the culture. Like the closest thing is like Boy Scouts, and they got compromised very heavily over two things: when they brought in people with SSA, and then people when they brought in women, and then their numbers plummeted, because what boy wants to be part of a tent group where there's the two boys in the one tent and the one, two girls in the other tent, and like you can't. I don't know how often you go camping, but like I used to be a Boy Scout growing up when it was just Boy Scouts, and like you can hear everything in the next tent, and so like you can't talk about.
They're not really thick walls. No, they're not really thick walls.
Yeah, and so like you just have all these like practical dynamics that are at play that people just, oh no, we got to be egalitarian and everything for everyone. It's like no, that doesn't work.
And so you could even say, and we're not trying to rag on this, we're just trying to bring in different opinions, folks. When you introduce female altar servers, that will filter up and make how the priest acts, instead of being more masculine. Now the priest has to start incorporating elements that are more feminine to accommodate your female altar servers. Whether they do it consciously or subconsciously, these things start to kind of, bleed out from the bottom up, if you will, in that regard. I'm not saying it's a sole factor, ladies and gentlemen.
Right.
I'm saying it's another factor that the priest has to take into account now for a variety of different reasons.
And it goes back to the image that we kind of talked about earlier, where you have like a parish like mine, small parish, bunch of boys, and then you have a big parish and they let girls in, and it's just girls, or it's like 9 out of 10 of them are girls, right? Like on average. And you add that into the extraordinary ministers of the Holy Communion, and most of them are women.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you're in the pew and you're looking up, what do you see mostly?
Yeah.
Oh, this
Yeah.
is a woman's thing. Like that's what you see aesthetically. Like that is just what you see. And
And
and and
and
the
go
go
once again, ADD brain. I got to get it out.
That's
If
fine.
you get
Yeah.
to mass early enough, and
Mhm.
if you're at a Novus Ordo, let's say, and the females are lecterns, they're usually up on the actual altar, looking at their readings or moving their stuff around, or if it's they're setting things up. There's a very heavy female influence, and once again, it's not because we think females are bad, folks.
Right.
Obviously, we don't. The nunnery is probably one of the most beautiful things in Catholicism that people don't give enough credit to, right? When you see a group of nuns hanging out, they're some of the most joyous people in out there. And I know they got a bad rap because of Catholic schools and stuff like that, but nuns rock. And I think
Yeah.
more people need to say that. And when you emphasize girls to go to the altar and kind of mimic what the boys are doing, and that's like you said, it's not inherently a path to priesthood, but it gives boys the impression, hey, this is what it's like to be a part of a mass, and this is
Yeah.
the importance of it. And when you put women there, you're like, oh, you don't have to be a nun, don't worry about that. That's not important. You want to be doing these things instead. And it kind of
Right.
does two things: it diminishes nuns and it feminizes the masculine. So you like it's split down the middle. The feminine side, we have nunneries, we have this, we have all these amazing things that the church promotes. And for males, we have these. And once you start bleeding the two out, one will diminish and one will become compromised.
And what's crazy about that is the including women into the altar server, or being altar boys, like as some people will say it, like female altar boys. Um,
They're trans
the
altars, trans altar servers.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going all the directions right now. But
Sorry, man. I told you this thing's like a river. It goes wherever the
no, it's
water
fine. Yeah,
leads.
they have dropped significantly more. So they used to have like 180,000 in 1965 in America, and now they're at like 35,000. So there has been they're at like 1/6 of what they were
Mhm.
right after Vatican II. And the reason why it's 1965, I'm not just pulling that to like do
Yeah.
Vatican II stuff. That's not what I'm doing. It's because I'm basing it off of Cara, the apostolate out of Georgetown, that keeps track of these numbers. And so like I'm very like, again, by the numbers guy.
Yeah.
And so that is the most reliable number that I have, and it's from a Catholic group that is specifically meant to be tracking this. And they do a good job. It's just a matter of like the numbers. I mean, they're just not there. Like there's not this growing sensation for all the altar girls,
Mhm.
right? They're not joining religious orders
No.
at a rate that you would expect given how prevalent they are.
Yeah.
Like it's like the average Novus Ordo will have like, if they have altar girls or altar anything, like they will have like 2 and 2 or something, right?
Mhm.
Like it's um or again more like, because boys are turned off by girls being there, where girls are not necessarily turned off. And
Yeah.
then like you get into the whole parent thing too. Oh man, like that whole dynamic of like, I want my girls to be just like the boys and just as involved, and like that's a real thing.
Oh yeah.
Like I've been yelled at by people on my channel for showing like the statistics and like on altar boys in relation to the priesthood, and people get really mad,
Yeah.
especially if they have daughters. Like I have both, so I'm like, and,
Whatever.
and yeah, I'm just like, yeah, like this isn't. I just, I know that an altar girl will never be a priest,
Yeah.
but that's what that's the type of position she's in, and the church recognizes when it established altar girls, um, it recognizes uh, the significance of altar boys, and that if you have like 9 altar boys and there's one girl and one boy that want to fill in that last 10th position, the priest needs to give it to the boy. So like there is a preference for the boys in the altar girl thing, but unfortunately there seems to be personal biases um, at times with priests where they prefer girls because the girls listen better, or a number of other things, which is understandable from a, if we're going to say that altar servers are needed, but they're not needed, right? Like they're there for the purpose of exposing primarily men to the mass in a profound way.
Yeah, and you get the competition, like you stated, from certain parents that want to see their kid to do it, and it's like, well, it's great, but it's not helpful for your own personal gain. And sometimes, as you said, if the priest is not from there, if because especially since we rotate priests out pretty regularly in the Novus Ordo, a lot of times you'll get a. I know and this is not to bang on it, folks. This is just the state of the church, is what we're talking about, and so it doesn't incentivize a priest to be masculine and to stand the ground and say, listen, I only want
Yeah.
altar boys because that's how I want to do things. Because the parish council, which is probably made up of a majority of women, will say, well, Father, we're the ones who are essentially running this place, and we, without us, you can't get this stuff done. And we'd like to see the word they like to use, better representation
Yeah.
for the church and what we have. And kind of like the Philly baseball guy, eventually you kind of just throw your hands up and you're like, whatever, it's fine. I don't really care. You can just. I'm sorry, folks. Topical. You got,
No, it's fine. They have the haircut too.
yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
They may, the priest, because he's like, you know what, I'm just here, I gotta, this is my assignment, I probably won't be
Yep.
here in a couple of
And
years,
and that's
and
that's
move on.
exactly the mentality is, this is my assignment.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like, this isn't my bride. Like, because they should be saying, in relation to what they're doing. Now, I say should, and not in a way that they. So I don't want to get, if a priest's watching this, I don't want to give the impression that you need to adopt my vernacular. That's not what I'm saying.
Not at
But
all.
the intent is the this is my bride, right? Like, when I get put here, like, it's not my assignment, it's my bride, and I need to treat her well, right? And so and I get that from Bishop Fisher, like the martyr in England, because that's how he referred to his diocese.
Yeah.
And so I thought, that's just always stuck with me, where it's like, that is the mentality that a faithful cleric should have, based off his example. And so, but like this idea of moving priests around, like that creates a stepfather mentality,
Yeah.
and that is like so dangerous. And I understand they're trying to, like, oh well, the cult of personality, but it's like, really, how big is that? Like, how big of a deal is that?
That seems
Like, I
like
don't think it's
an individual, or to be addressed as needed kind of issue.
exactly that, because like our parish is like thriving, but we know that Father Eric, like, his assignment's coming to an end soon. And now, when I say thriving, it is a struggling parish because it is on the edges, like it is in the margins. It's not in a robustly expensive neighborhood, and but like the what do you call it, but like him moving, like, it would just completely upend everything.
Yeah.
Like, it would just be so traumatic to the parish that I'm pretty sure the parish would just shut down.
Yeah.
Because that's what's holding it on. And sometimes you need that, like, right? Like, you have the father who's lifting up the family. Like, it all comes back to fatherhood, and actions that the priests take are going to necessarily need to be masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Because when
Yeah.
they start moving away from that, like, it's like the walls start collapsing.
Well, yeah, and you have a father, or a leader of the head of a household, or the father has certain priorities, and these are the
Yes.
things we're going to focus on. And I know you guys, and so this is how we're going to address this specific parish. You have a guy who comes in, you're in Michigan, you have your priest. I don't know if it's this extreme. He comes in from Arizona or whatever the case may be, or whatever.
I mean, that's literally what happened with our
Yeah. And then he's first of all, he's like, it's really cold, so I don't like it here. And secondly, his priorities could be different based on a number of things. and now the parish has to get, like you said, with a stepfather, you have to get readjusted and what if he is not on the same wavelength as far as priorities? Maybe they have a different set of priorities. Maybe they're
Right.
more leaning towards social justice or whatever the case may be, or or whatever, because that's how they did it in their old parish, and now you have an internal conflict, which is the last thing you want between the parent and the children.
Right. And that's kind of with the movement from Arizona to here. Like, I mean, that our entire archdiocese is dealing with that
Yep.
because we have, and like we stated earlier, we used to have a bunch of TLMs. We don't anymore.
Yep.
And like when you had like 10% of the parishes be TLMs in an archdiocese, which is just unheard of. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know why the Archdiocese of Detroit didn't get more traction with the TLM movement, because it was very robust, um, and on some level it still is, right? Like, I don't want to push down that move, like what's happening in that group, because we know a lot of, I mean, we know a lot of people who are in there. So,
Yeah.
but the idea of, like you said, you're coming in and you're reestablishing dominance, right? Like, because that's kind of what you have to do. You have to do that. Like, if you don't do that, then um, you if you don't show leadership, and I'm not saying being domineering, but you're establishing dominance in terms of leadership, right? Like, you have to show that you're willing to lead the people in however you think you need to lead it. And like you said, when you go from Arizona to Michigan, um, there are cultural values that have changed, that are different, and even though we're a state that leans more blue, um, the Catholic population tends to lean more red, right?
Yeah.
Like, just as a comparison, and so the you're absolutely, I agree completely with what you're saying, and like, I guess to bring it more topical, uh, with what happened at Annunciation, right?
Oh
Like,
yeah.
the 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 idea that parishes can't protect themselves, right? Like, that is a father's, like, that is a huge part of a father's job, is to be able to protect your children. And when you say openly that you don't have any protection and you can just walk, basically, this is a gun. I don't know if it's going to trigger it or not. I don't typically talk about guns on mine, so you probably know that more than I do. But when you say this is a gun-free zone,
Hmm.
to me, you're saying we're a target.
Yeah, we call it a soft target.
Yeah, and it's just like, that's not okay. And I mean, I'm in Michigan, so like, Michigan is not like this like gun, huge gun area. In fact, like, I would say, like, a lot of people get scared when they see guns,
Hmm.
because that's the culture that we have. But there's a which is unfortunate, because basically everyone just relies on the police, right? And the police always come too late.
Well, also
Um,
the police, and I always love dropping this based on a couple SCOTUS cases. The police are actually not obligated to protect you. They have no constitutional or any real right or duty to protect you. There's a case, DeShaney v. Winnebago from '89, which states that the police they have no obligation to interfere in private parties' affairs. So it states that the police are there to pretty much take reports and clean up and secure scenes, and not actually serve and protect. Serve and protect is a great buzz tested phrase that you can put on the side of a car to make everybody feel better, but in the end it's not really the job that they have.
right, and like, this site, like, so we have a lot of ushers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in our parish, and so, given what happened where the gun was shot through the stained glass, we do have stained glasses,
Yep.
and so our ushers will go outside and check. And they did this before that incident. But, if there is a situation where um, the ushers aren't able to handle the person because, it's a gun-free zone type of situation, um, then everybody in the building's at risk.
Oh, of course. Yep.
And this idea of, what is it, porters, right? Like Blessed Solanus Casey comes from the Archdiocese of Detroit. He's a porter. I don't think he was packing when he was a porter, but traditionally, one of the jobs of the porter was protection. And so this idea that we didn't have people who would protect the congregation, like it's not even within our, like, it's within our tradition that that happens.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird to see, again, like bishops and priests come out and say, like, no guns in the church, because like of, I mean,
It
it seems very,
triggers
it,
others who are sensitive to guns and gun violence and all these other kinds of things. And real quick, like when I talk to, because I'm a licensed to carry instructor here in the state of Texas,
yeah,
and I tell people when they get their license that your one of your primary jobs as a firearm owner and somebody who carries a firearm is you are going to have to bend over backwards to accommodate the general population, because the general population does not share our value of firearms, and they have been propagandized to fear firearms based on media, news, academia, whatever the case may be. So you have to ensure that you are putting the needs of the general population over your own in
right,
that regard. And that's an unfortunate thing that we have to deal with across the board. And that extends to the US CCB and the fact that it is a very political organization. And the whole reason I started the Modern Papist is because bishop after bishop were calling for gun control or all these other kinds of things. Like even we saw it after denunciation. You had bishops that were like, "Oh well, the scourge of gun violence," and we're like, "Was it really gun violence?" But was it
well,
really gun
right, yeah,
violence was the problem there? But they always say, "Well, we need to." Take steps to purge it. And then you had Pope Leo, who came out and said we need to end the pandemic of uh, gun violence, arms, large and small. And that was another thing where, because Protestants dominate the gun space and they come out, they're like, Rick, what about those? I'm like, well, and I have to do my little dance and explain all these things because the bishops and the authority have taken us, not all of them, but the majority of them, and that's how the USCCB works because it's a bureaucracy. The majority of them kind of form the opinion. Have taken the steps to say, listen, guns are bad and the scourge of gun violence and all these other kinds of things is bad. When, you have examples, Joey Olivillo, who I did an interview with, he up in Modern Day and in Dallas, he has a robust volunteer program, and he's gone to parishes across the country to teach people how to create effective volunteer programs, because you can't call them security, volunteer teams, like you said, ushers and volunteer teams to ensure that you can be as safe as possible. And it's more than just firearms; it's first aid, it's all these other kinds of things that kind of fall under that umbrella. And it's the fact that men are being disincentivized, as you said before I went on my rant.
yeah,
They're disincentivized from embracing that paternal role. Even if you don't have kids, if you are a husband, your job is to protect your family,
yeah,
and and of course, as a father, your job is to protect your wife and your kids, and it should you know expand out throughout the flock. If you have, let's just round numbers because I'm stupid, 100 or 100 parishioners, 50%, 50% are men. If you had the 50 men who all shared that same mindset, that church is going to be better off protecting itself than a lot of the men that are just sitting there. We have a crisis of not a lot of guys want to be there. They're kind of being dragged to mass by their wife. Um, and secondly, when they go home, the wife's like, we're not having guns in this house. I don't want them. And so they're kind of like, all right, honey, whatever, happy wife, happy life kind of thing. And so they're kind of deferring that as well. And so the masculinity crisis at the pulpit is reflected in the
yep,
flock. I actually, it was funny. The priest, I have a church that's about 5 minutes away from me. It's kind of like your church. We don't go to it a lot of times in case something like bad happens. It's right there if we need to. Uh,
yeah, yeah,
it was a priest from some country in Africa, and I'll never forget it because I was sitting there and he was like, "There is no reason why you should ever have to use a gun, ever." And I looked at my wife and I'm like, I might spontaneously combust in this church, considering my whole vocation is firearms and how Catholics can use them. I might just burst into flames because this guy's like, no guns ever. And I'm like, do you want a book? I can throw you a
Right.
book on the way out.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, it was a decent rant, so I don't want to, like, it's fine. But it's this idea of, like, we don't, what's the whole point of being meek when you're just weak?
Yep.
Because you can't be meek if you're weak, right? Like, because the meekness is you have the power, you have the ability to get into action, and you're choosing prudently when to do so, right? If you are always disarmed, if you are always in a position of like being a walking mat, which I know, like, because you have to reconcile that with, you know, taking it on the cheek, right? Like, all right, now I hit me on the other cheek. Like, we're not in a position of like hopelessness, like in our, what is it, the first 3 centuries of the church, right?
Yeah.
There was a sense of hopelessness where you can't really fight back, because by fighting back, like, you're not, like, nothing's going to happen, because you're like a very small community and you have this overwhelming force, the Roman Empire, just bearing down on you. And through their example is what converted the entire Roman Empire. And so that's a very different situation than being not in a like completely helpless situation, but a situation where we need to maneuver prudently and just at the end of the day, like, just defending ourselves.
Yep.
Like, it's the, I don't know, like, it, like, to
Well, the
me it's like
concept of
it
self-defense goes all the way
blows
back
my
to the
mind.
Council of Trent.
What?
The concept of self-defense goes all the way back to the Council of Trent. It's one of the first things that it's recognized,
Yeah.
and you know, as some of the earliest church teachings. And so you have numerous popes, numerous scholars. Saint Augustine of Hippo was really good writing about the fact that you know, we live in a fallen world, and it would be terrible if wicked people were able to dominate the just, and so we shouldn't allow such things. I'm obviously heavily paraphrasing that from City
Yeah.
of God, I believe it is. But there's numerous examples. We have the Cristeros, we have the Vendée, we have countless hundreds of other stories we've probably never heard of, where Catholics have taken up arms to defend themselves and their flocks, and so forth. But we've kind of been stuck in this liberation theology, which, you know, once liberation theology came out, and that really just destroyed all of the masculine uh, aesthetic that the church is really was based in. And that's kind of like the war we see now is the proliferation of liberation theology versus quote unquote tradition, and
Yeah.
how those two are constantly fighting.
And now, like, when you look at the areas that had liberation theology, like, they're getting converted to Protestantism. Like,
It's
that's like
next
a
step.
sleeping giant that no one is talking about, by the way, is this conversion of Latin America away from Catholicism to Protestantism. Because I don't know, when you look like something else, like the idea of having your tradition in what you're passing down look like Protestants to appease them to come in, well, you're also going to lose people going the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be bigger in Latin America, because unlike in America where we're the minority, right? Like, we may be the biggest quote unquote denomination, but we compared to all Protestants combined, like, we're smaller.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, in the South, or I'm sorry, in Latin America, it's the reverse, where it's just Catholics are everywhere, and now that's not so much the case, because they're just getting overrun by the conversions. Because, well, if that charismatic church looks like that charismatic church, then, and that charismatic church is Pentecostal, and they're doing literally the same things, except one has this period of the liturgy of the Eucharist, right? Like when the similarity is just
there's nothing to
remove,
distinguish the two. What's the appeal of Catholicism when
right.
Catholicism, in whatever you want to say about Ben Shapiro, he actually kind of relayed a little truth about this a little while ago. He's talking to Michael Knowles. He's like, well, if I was going to convert to Christianity, I would just do Catholicism because it's close to Protestantism at this point. So he essentially said something like that, which affirms pretty much what people who have been worried about the similarities between the two are, my wife and I call them happy churches. Like if you get the same kind of feeling at a happy church that you do at a typical Novus Ordo, then why do I have to go through all the supposed hoops, you would call it, at a Novus Ordo, when I can just go to the Protestant one and get my juice and cracker and call it a day, and I get a Starbucks on the way out.
Right, and if the catechetical aspects are really weak, right? Like if they just don't know their faith really well, that's really the problem, right? Because at that point, it's like, okay, well, if I understand this is the Eucharist, logically, I understand that's where Christ is. Uh-oh.
I was gonna let you go. There's just one thing I gotta change real quick. So we're good. I'm just I had to fix something.
Oh, got it.
So if you want to just continue to rant for like a minute on that point, I'll be right back.
Yeah, sure. So if you're trying to I'm sorry, going back to what I was saying, if you know the Eucharist is there, and you know that there's not a Eucharist at like the Pentecostal, right? And they just have crackers, then you can logically deduce, all right, well, this is where the truth is, right? Like this is the Catholic Church. But if you don't have that understanding and you like the people better at the Pentecostal place than the Catholic Church, you're very tempted to just leave. And that is kind of what we're seeing. I don't want to see that necessarily is the dynamic, but that's a type of dynamic that happens where you've brought it down so much in terms of the devotions and the liturgical practices, where it's so similar to the other guys that you're having this exchange happen, and it's not good.
No.
Because those people who have been Catholic their whole life and they're going through the motions, even if they're going through the motions, right? Like it's not great, but you can still reach them because they're still in house. But if you make it so they have an emotional choice based off who they like better, and you bring the liturgy, the devotions, everything down to that, then that's a real problem. Because that's where you kind of get this idea of like, well, the Protestants that come into the Catholic Church are like robust, and those that leave aren't. But like, that's part of the problem, is that even non-robust Catholics should stay in the Catholic Church. Like that's a huge problem. And it's not just about education, because you're not going to be able to reach everybody. Like,
and one thing that's a problem now is that a lot of churches that are being converted, a lot of mainline Catholic churches, we gonna call them Novus Ordo or whatever, they're following the template that a lot of Protestants use, which is kind of emotional high, where they appeal to the emotion. And the problem with that is that can only sustain itself for a certain period of time before the emotional high wears off. Could be 6 months, could be a year. Eventually it goes away. And that's why you see so many people within Protestant denominations hop from church to church to church, because they're chasing that high. And what separates that high is the good, true beauty logic that the Catholic Church is, the truth, right? You may go through periods of spiritual dryness, even some of our greatest saints have gone through them, but it doesn't root you in the emotion of it. It roots you in the fact that I'm not here for me, which is the mainline Protestant idea. You're here for you, and you're here for the community, and you're here for the rock climbing wall and all this other kind of stuff, where it's like, no, I'm not here because I need to feel better. I'm here because, he asked for an hour a week, and my love for him, no matter how dry it is or how I'm feeling, I rise above that in this relationship. And it's not taught that way. It's like, we're here for the community, guys, and we're going to clap at mass and all these other kinds of things. And it's just, yeah, it's the problem of trying to reach the masses at the lowest common denominator, which would eventually lead, like you say, to that conversion or that switching.
And bringing it back to like the topic of masculinity with the priesthood,
Mm-hmm.
it's also like you have this idea of when dad comes home, like I need to straighten up. Like I'm with mom, it's relaxed. When I'm with dad, things I have to be better. I still respect him, but like he's kind of like the enforcer, right?
Yep.
And I'm not saying women don't enforce like in their family.
They're two different roles. It's just two different roles.
Right. One's supposed to be nurturing, the other's guiding, and the guideposts are sometimes bumpy. And I'm not, so like I'm not saying, there's going to be discipline, not necessarily physical. So I'm in case.
Well, there's rules, and rules have to be enforced.
Right. And
that's
so
how it goes.
Exactly. And so, like, what you may get away with mom, you won't be getting away with dad. And there's a reason for that. I think, well, there's a lot of reasons for that, but exactly what you said, there are two different roles. But also, if the priest isn't following in that way, where there are guideposts that he's putting up and saying no is a thing, right? Like, so for example, I'll give you an example that I think everybody has heard of is the eulogy debate, right? At funerals, which is, we are not supposed to do eulogies at funerals. That is expressly forbidden in the germ. But there are so many funerals I've been to where a eulogy happens in the mass.
Both my parents died. They had eulogies at them.
Right, like that's not supposed to happen. And that's a tough time, but that's the point where being the spiritual father is supposed to kick in the most. Like, not sacraments, right? Like I'm not saying that diminishes the sacraments or whatever, but like you're dealing with a highly emotional time for the family, and they want to do whatever they think will make them feel better. And you don't sacrifice the mass, the virtue of obedience, because you want to make them feel better, right? Like that's not okay. But like
that also leads to the coffin canonizations, which the two parts: the coffin canonization and then the dilution of heaven. Right. Yep. Oh, I worked with a guy in my church who used to give a great example of the coffin canonization. Like, Uncle John is at the bar smoking cigars and playing the piano and waiting for. It's like, no, heaven is not the country club on the back nine. But the way they kind of do those things, like he's having cigars forever and all these other kinds of stuff, and it's like, no, we shouldn't be doing any of that.
And that's the type of thing that happened to my grandfather. He was a Protestant, but he's married to my grandmother, who's a Catholic, and so we were able to have a Catholic funeral. We were able to have a funeral mass for him. Mm-hmm. He wasn't confirmed, even though, man, I tried. I tried to get him confirmed because he wanted to be confirmed. But he'd be like, I remember the priest saying, Jim will be the first one, because his name was James. Jim will be the first one greeting us in heaven. And I'm like, that is like, okay, you're canonizing my Protestant grandfather, which, we pray for him every night, but like you're also like giving bad theology. That is not who they're going to meet in heaven first. Like if you're going to heaven, that is not the first person you meet. Is like God is the first person you meet. Like what are you saying? And like it's just like so bad. And it's again, it's this effeminate feeling of we need to over nurture people. So like I told my wife just in relation to the funeral, all right, I die. No one does a eulogy. You do not burn me. I'm giving enough life insurance for that. Like I have enough life insurance that you don't need to burn me. You can bury me properly. And then you have a wake, a true wake. Buy alcohol for everybody. Like enjoy the after party, basically, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where the eulogies are supposed to happen, right? Like where
Mhm.
it's like, oh, remember that time like we did this, or with dad, or remember that time I did this with Ryan, or remember that time, all those things. That's where it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It's not
Yep.
supposed to happen when you're praying for his soul in purgatory or her soul in purgatory.
Nope. Nope. The Irish do it well. The Irish have that down pat. The wakes.
Yeah,
We know how to take care of and celebrate the life of our person. I mean, my wife, in Mexican culture, they have the rosary, and then they
yeah,
have the wake, and then they actually don't have wakes. Like when she went to both my parents' wakes, she's like, this is weird because they don't do that. They have the rosary and then they have the funeral. Like they go boom
yeah.
boom. That's how they take care of business in that regard. So it's also very interesting to see how that works. But yeah, the fact that it's more the priesthood is being pushed to focus more on like emotional needs instead of spiritual needs. So that's how you get like eulogies and you get all these other kinds of things to help, and instead of saying, listen, we're here for the soul of your husband, father, or whatever the case may be, and we need to pray for that and offer this pain up for it, and really the guidance and that how to deal with that. Like, oh, you're in
Yeah,
pain, guess what, you can offer that up, for
exactly.
if your husband, father, daughter is in purgatory, you can offer up this pain maybe for them if they are there, and try to work that way and really focus on the supernatural side of things, because there's that whole vast, people don't even, talk about purgatory and all these other kinds of things that most Catholics don't even know about, and they can't, and there's the wonderful ways that Catholicism helps us deal with death and the afterlife and all these other kinds of things that priests are just like, don't worry about that. It's they think it's almost like it's too heavy for the congregation to deal with.
Well, right, and there's true hope, right? Like Christ died like for us to have hope, and so like we've already got that built in, like that emotional aspect built in. It's just the way it's conveyed. It's way like some people are like, you can never be too merciful. I'm like, yeah, you can. Like if you're not upholding justice whatsoever, mercy becomes negligence,
Mm,
right? Like because if you're not upholding justice, like you're just letting anything happen for the sake of, like, you're calling it mercy, but it's not mercy. Like Christ, not to because I get into a lot of Twitter debates with people about around this topic, because it's just like you need, like, mercy and justice are like the two are reconcilable, but they need each other for them
hmm
to exist in the first place. And well, maybe not so much justice, but mercy definitely does. It requires justice, um, and so like if yeah, once you lose justice, it just becomes a problem. And so, sorry, I don't want to get too much into the weeds, because I don't know how long you want this to go. So like it's there's,
I get it. It's a good. If you have questions about that, you can always find Joseph at Modern Papist on X, or reach out to him, follow his channel. I'll have links to both of those in the description down below. And I know Ryan would love to embellish the topic with you, if you really want to ask him about those types of things. So Ryan, if you had, what are some of your ideas to get masculine men to consider the priesthood?
like what the masculine. So you're saying they're already men?
Yeah, how can we attract men that we would want to be priests? How can we make the pre I mean, this may not be a really well worded question.
Right.
But how can we, I guess as laity, how can we make um help masculine men if they are discerning the priesthood? How can we help them in that way, if that makes sense in any way in that question?
So Okay, so people who are discerning the priesthood. So I guess it would be a matter of when you look at the, I don't know, that seems so loaded to me because you can go into
It's a
the
very
idea,
strange question.
like,
If you want to kind of pass on it, I get it.
well, no, so like if you're talking about like masculine, like how I understood your first question was you want masculine men to look at Catholicism in general. So it's a very broad question. That's how I took your first question.
Yeah.
So like the Vatican, if I remember correctly, like was advertising like attractive, like masculine but attractive men, or not but attractive masculine men, and it was almost doing it in a sexual way, like a very sexual way. Like you can look it up because it wasn't really promoted in English, but you could see it in other languages. I think there were 3 podcasters from 3 different countries, not in America. And I was like, this is not the way to get men in here. Like you're basically treating these guys as like models. And it's like that's not the way to do it. I think if you're going to look at what's happening in the West in particular with the like Muslims, and they're getting conversions. And one of the reasons they're getting conversions is that they're part of their religion requires a type of challenge to the men. And with us, like we really need to show sacrifice as the challenge that we need to do, not this like limp-wristed sacrifice. I mean, like where it's like all wordy and whatever, but like you're actually putting yourself on the line. Relate, like it's one of the reasons why I love like I actually have another channel where I do Catholic memes, but like I love the memes around the Crusades. And the reason why the Crusades are so important is because those were men that were sacrificing their livelihoods to go and fight for the church and defend Europe and the Holy Land. And even when they had families, they did that because like it wasn't just single men that did that. All men were called to do the Crusades, and those that went, they were sacrificing for it, and we're kind of getting to a point where maybe not as violent, but maybe I don't know, I can't tell the future,
Right.
but it's this idea of calling yourself or calling men out of being docile simps that are just crusading online. And like I'm not saying there should be no presence in X, like me and you are both on X, right, for example, because people are still there and you still need to draw them to touch grass, right? It's just the fact that and we're doing this, right, like which people are watching, but it's this understanding of like I have 5 kids, my wife's a stay-at-home mom, I'm the only one bringing in money, right? Like I'm sacrificing for my family, and I'm doing it from the perspective as a Catholic. I'm not doing it from the perspective of, oh, you're a statistician, you're just making a whole bunch of money or whatever. No, like I'm not making as much money as you probably think I am, but I'm making deep sacrifices both with my family and my wallet and my lifestyle. It's to be more like Christ, right? Like, and that's where I'm drawing that from. And we don't have enough people doing that, or at least we don't have enough people in the, like, let's just say normal culture really promoting that. We have a lot of theologians doing that, and it's like you can kind of write them off. It's like, well, you're getting paid to talk about this stuff, right? Like of course you can do it. Or like you get like millionaires doing it, and it's like, well, of course you've got millions of dollars. Like when you're making like when you're not making a lot of money, like just above the median, right? Like at times, and you have 3 or 4 kids, that looks daunting to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But you can still do it, and you just need to put the effort in. And so like I'm kind of like in a very simplified way using my life as an example of you call men to actually put their money where their mouth is, as opposed to just acting like boys. And and we need more people saying that again, that aren't necessarily making the money off saying that. Like, I'm not a big YouTube channel, right? Like, I've got 2,000 subscribers. I'm not Taylor Marshall or Trent Horn or something, like someone like that. But it's important that people, normal people, just say that.
Mm.
And I don't think we have enough of them doing that. And so to address that question, I know like I went on for like 5 minutes.
Oh, I think it's a really good point. Oh, good.
And but like in terms of like bringing men into the priesthood, that is, I think, more of a they if they're discerning the priesthood, they need to be able to discern properly. I think that's like the first thing. If they're already like thinking about the priesthood, then there are plenty of priests that have, like solid priests that have gone out and explained, all right, these are the steps that you really should take, not to guarantee that you're a priest, like, that kind of confirmation bias where it's really in your head that you're becoming a priest, not that God is calling you to be a priest. But there are plenty of priests and I don't have any off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but you can find them where they explain like how they discerned, and having that exposure, I think, is like really important, because the people who are saying this are the younger, more traditional and masculine priests that are rising up in the clergy. They're the ones that know how to do YouTube channels. They're the ones that know, you know what I mean? Like, so like, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm sure there's some older priests that may do it, and what he says may be perfect, but in terms of the amount, so the quantity as opposed to the quality, there's going to be a lot of overlap to the quantity and the quality, given how many priests are doing the who are on YouTube doing those guiding practices. So that's what I would do, is I would start there. Outside of that, I can't say anything because I'm not a priest and I don't quite know.
No, I think you actually answered the question, because it was a broad question anyway. So you could really take it in any direction that you wanted to go. I do like the fact that there's some really good priests on Instagram and on YouTube that are fantastic. And I have a priest friend of mine who he works at a college. And this dude he would be what you would consider like a masculine priest. He's definitely, he's not effeminate in any way. And he actually, we had a talk a while back on how to reach out more to people without watering down theology and things like that, because that's one thing that he has. He's worried that it's like, well, if I'm going to reach out, I don't want to water down the message in order to reach more people and things like that. And I think that's something that a lot of, and I don't want to get into a problem here. Anybody who gets into the game where you're talking about the faith, and this goes whether they're clergy or laymen, whether they're chasing algorithms or if they're pushing like the faith in that regard. There's always the problem of once you get too big, you're kind of catering to the audience and what they want to hear. So that's a problem there as well. So yeah, it's a great topic to think about, folks. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. We're about an hour and a half in. I don't want to keep Ryan that much longer, because we could probably talk about every other aspect for another 3 hours and not get bored in this regard. But Ryan, thank you so much for taking some time, especially since you got like 5 kids. I want to let you get back to them. And
they're all in bed, so like don't worry about that.
Well, then I don't want you to do that in that regard. But overall, we'll have you back on, because I definitely there'll be other things that I want you to come on and talk about, because you are a wealth of knowledge. But let people know, if is their first time being introduced to you, how can they follow you? Of course, everything will be in the box down below, but anything else you want to promote specifically?
Well, just the at at Modern Papist on X, and then in the Modern Papist on YouTube. Those are my two primary areas that I work with. I mentioned the memes earlier. So like this is something I did for my kids because we watch memes as a family, and I was like, all right, well, I'm sick of looking at all these memes that just aren't Catholic and really promote the secular culture. I'm going to gather up memes. I'm going to create some memes. So and I'm going to make videos so my kids, I know exactly what they're watching, right? Like and they'll enjoy it. And that is called Meanwhile. So MEMEWHILE. And so it doesn't look Catholic at the logo, but it is definitely a Catholic channel. Like the community is actually like really good, like very Catholic. We what is it? It was suggested when we hit 5,000 subscribers that what is it? To do a mass for the people. Like that came from one of the, and so like I did. I was like, everybody who's who's on subscribing for the channel, I paid for a mass to be said for them so that the graces could be passed in like giving back as best I can, because again the community is really good, and I know that's like not the same as Modern Papist, but it is related, and so and it's not as serious. Like that's the other thing, is because you can't just be stuck on the seriousness of everything, right?
No.
Like these last few days I think are a perfect example of there are times to be serious, like now, but there are also times to be joyful, relaxed, and in light of what's happened, I wanted to bring that up as a point. So
awesome. We'll link for that one too, folks. So you guys can definitely go subscribe and follow that as well. This is Rick Cass. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. We'll talk to y'all later. God bless, and Viva Cristo Rey.